Hey, what's going on, everybody, and welcome back to my channel, Movie Files. Elliot back again with a brand new TV review, and today we are discussing the return of one of my favorite shows of last year, and that is Hulu's original Love, Victor Season 2, which is out on Hulu today, and I am so excited to be breaking it down for you all. We're talking character moments, we're talking love, we're talking heartbreak, and so much more all in this review, and I'm so excited to be breaking it all down for you all. But before we dive into it, make sure you're following me on all my other social media accounts. If you're new to the channel, welcome to the community. Consider subscribing to the channel, and while you all are at it, make sure you hit that notification bell. That way you can get the alert for when I drop new content. It would mean so much to me if you all enjoy this type of review to give it a thumbs up, share the video. It helps out the channel a lot, but I also appreciate the support. And in those comments, to all my Love Victor fans out there, let's talk about this second season. Let's talk about your favorite moments, your favorite characters, what worked for you, what didn't work for you, what you think about how they tackled some of the new subject matters and the new characters that we get in this season, and who do you all think is behind that door when we get the finale, and what would you like to see in a season 3? Let's talk about it all in the comments below. So the way I want to handle this review, like I do with all the shows that are available to binge, I spend the first half of this video just talking about the show, no spoilers whatsoever. So if you're on the fence about the show, you just want to get a brief idea of my thoughts on the show, that is the spoiler-free portion. The second half is more of a discussion, a spoiler discussion. So I have my notes here, talking about all 10 episodes, breaking it down, and talking about the stuff that worked and didn't work for me, talk about the big reveals of the episode. So we're going to be spending that second half of the video diving deeper into the spoiler discussion. So I'm going to leave time codes and chapters and all that stuff in the description below so you can kind of know how this video will be handled. So let's get into the spoiler-free portion of this video, starting off with, I'm such a big fan of this show. Just briefly, I'm going to leave it on the screen. I'm going to leave it in the description below. I reviewed the first season, and I was just so pleasantly surprised because I watch a lot of YA stuff. I can watch stuff from Euphoria, Generation, Love, Victor, and so many other, Outer Banks. I watch so much stuff, and there's some good YA content out there, as well as movies, and there's some bad YA stuff out there. But what I loved about this show, and what I liked about the show so much more than what the movie did, is another perspective. My biggest criticism with Love, Simon, which I reviewed that film many years ago, it was another side of the story. It was a little bit more of the accepting side of someone coming out to their parents. It was a little bit too surface level for me. But what I loved about the first season of Love, Victor, it dives into the other side when your family is maybe not as accepting, when you're coming from a different background, when you have another scenario going on with the characters having family members that are maybe divorcing, and just so much richness within these characters. I was very impressed by season 1, and I'm just going to say it right now. I think season 2 is just as good, if not better, than season 1, and I'm going to get into my reasons here in a bit, but I'm just so impressed by the writing, the acting. The show not only, in my opinion, represents the LGBTQ in a good light, but it also just shows other stories that are within the zeitgeist of conversations regarding the subject matters that this second season tackle, and in my opinion, did a good job of doing so. We're not only continuing the conversation about what it's like for Victor coming out, having a boyfriend in Benji, and dealing with, how are other people accepting that. We have how Mia was affected by that, how, some of his close friends and obviously his family, but also we're tackling things like depression in this particular season, dealing with Felix and his mom. We're dealing with the subject matter of it's not wrong to ask for help. We're talking about the religious aspect of the LGBTQ community, how it's deemed upon in some religions that it is a sin, that you're going to hell for being gay. We tackle that in this season. We have family anxiety. We have older generations who were taught at a young age that being gay is a bad thing. We have that tackled in the show. We have defending your family, even though they have a bad mindset, but kind of knowing that they come from a certain background and how they were raised. So accepting your family and not accepting that they are in this mindset, but just knowing that they come from a different time period, right? So we have that, and there's a lot of stuff going on with the parenting in this show, which I thought was a big theme in this show, which, speaking on that note, in regards to the mature nature, we all know the debacle of last year when this show was supposed to be on Disney Plus, but Disney came out with a statement saying that they thought it was too mature and doesn't fit their platform, which is just nonsense. But I think that it worked out for the better, because I think having this show on Hulu, and especially tackling this season, it's a lot more mature. It's some sex scenes, it's hot, it's steamy. There's more subject matters that are a little bit more in the mature nature that they tackle. Again, I think this is still a family-friendly show, but it definitely has more adult content. Now, we're not talking about, this isn't Euphoria by any means, but it is still a mature show that tackles a lot of stuff within the LGBTQ community, within dealing with depression, within dealing with religious themes and things of that nature. So I am so happy that they did find a home to have this type of mature subject matter on Hulu. So I thought this season was a lot more mature in a lot of ways than season 1. But then just kind of diving deeper into some of these characters without diving into the spoilers of the characters, but just a little bit on their arcs and what I liked about them. Starting off with the lead of the show, Victor, who I have my criticisms with the actor still, but I still think that the actor, Michael, he did definitely evolve. He definitely has grown in the role. And just in particularly Victor's story in this season, as we know it last year, he now is dating Benji, and he came out to his parents. And what does that look like in season 2? Well, it is has its highs, it has its lows, and everything in between. And I thought that Michael did a really good job of bringing the character home, working on those character moments that I thought was a little bit flawed last year in regards to the emotional moments. I thought that he really kind of stepped up this season. And just seeing the moments with him and Benji, they are a perfect couple at times, but there are some rough patches that they go through. And there's some things that they learn about each other that they might not be perfect for each other. So I love what we get with Victor. And then even the stuff that he's dealing with his family, who we'll talk about here in a second. But I thought that Victor did a good job. But I'm not gonna lie, guys, I love Victor. I love the story that he has and seeing him coming out and how he's tackling that and discovering who he is. But I am maybe a bigger fan of the supporting cast, starting off with my favorite character last year, Mia. I love that actress. I think she's just so mature and has such a great screen presence. Now, Mia, she isn't as in the forefront as she was in season 1 because she was obviously in a relationship with Victor, but the stuff that she does get in the second season is still rich. It's still fascinating to me. I still love this character. You know, we're dealing with the aftermath, the repercussions of what she, you know, obviously finding out that her boyfriend was gay and he, you know, likes Benji. So she's dealing with that in this season and how that applies to her day-to-day life. You know, we know from last season that her mom walked out on her. Her dad seems to put his career first. He now has a new wife that he's marrying this season. They have a baby on the way. So she has that in the back of her head. Like, what is it about me that makes people not want to be with me? So I love what we get with her. And obviously she still has her dealing with new relationships in this season and may or may not be in a relationship with Andrew, who I thought was a little bit more important in this season, had a little bit more to do, but I still, Mia, she isn't my favorite character in this season, but I still love her as a character. But focusing on some other characters, we have like Mia's best friend, Lake, who Lake took a bit of a backseat this season, and not necessarily a backseat, but she definitely has like one storyline that they keep her in this kind of lane in this season, which is mostly being Felix's girlfriend and dealing with that and dealing with them kind of figuring out each other. And we get Felix's mom more implementing the story. So I still like Lake. I think she's funny. I think she's witty. I love her sense of humor in the show. I love the stuff that she tackles with her and her mom and how she was raised. But we don't get as many dimensions from Lake this season, but the stuff that they do give her, I still enjoyed. But speaking of Lake, let's talk about my man Felix, who is one of my favorite characters, no doubt, in the show. He's still funny. He still has the great comedic moments. He's still like having his little one-liners that I enjoy. But man, Felix definitely hit on the emotional moments in this season. We do focus on Felix and Lake's relationship and Felix and Victor and him being a good friend of Victor and all that and supporting him and all that good stuff. But Felix has some emotional depth in this season, guys. We'll talk about it more in the spoiler portion, but he's dealing with his mom who deals with depression and what that looks like for him and some of the stuff that he deals with, you know, child protective services and things of that nature. And at the same time, he's still a teenager. He has a new girlfriend. He has a best friend that just came out. So I really enjoy what they did with Felix in this episode. And there is a potential love triangle that they touch on in this season that I'll talk about a little bit later. But you know, focusing on other characters, Benji, you know, Benji's okay. You know, Benji definitely has a little bit more dimensions this season. We learn a little bit more about his past and things that he's went through. But Benji's just like an okay character to me. He is definitely replaced in the in the boyfriend category in this season. We'll talk about that later in the spoilers. But Benji was fine. But let's focus on my favorite family on the show, and that is the Salazar family. And we get so much with them. We get so much with Pilar in this season. I think that they gave her more stuff to do, which I love that character last year, but I felt like she just was kind of forgotten about at times. But this season, she's you know, might have a boyfriend she's looking to get into a relationship with. She's still obviously a good sister to Victor and supporting her brother. She's dealing with, you know, just a lot of stuff that I really enjoyed about Pilar that we'll talk about in the spoilers. But I really enjoy that actress that plays that character. Little Adrian's still funny like he was in season 1. But listen, Armando and his wife. I love Isabel. I love what they do in this season. They have so much richness. They have this. They're dealing with obviously separation. What does it look like for them being together since they were kids and now separating, and how their kids are handling that, how they're handling obviously Victor coming out. They might be looking to date other people. There's so much from the Salazar family, and I love the parents. And there's a particular storyline that I thought was, we normally see in these LGBTQ movies and shows that most cases, not all cases, that the mom's a little bit more accepting of their son or daughter coming out, and the dad's the one's a little bit on edge and might be a little bit more standoffish. But not in this show. It's the reverse. Isabel's having a rough time with her son coming out, not only from how she was raised, but her religious beliefs. And it's not just like easily resolved within a couple episodes. It's a storyline that goes through most of the second season, which I really enjoyed. That the show didn't just like a clean slate. It wasn't an easy storyline to tackle, so I really appreciate that. But I really enjoy, again, the adults and the themes and the parenting on many different levels. Not only the Salazar family, but Lake's mom, Felix's mom. There's a lot of parenting stuff that's going on this season. I mean, Benji parents even have a moment in the show. So there's a lot of stuff that I appreciate. Again, the mature nature that the show had to offer. So we talked about all the main characters of the show, but there is a new character that I am happy to say is my favorite character this season, and that is this new character by the name of Rahim. Now, he is, and we'll talk about him in the spoiler portion more, but he is a friend of Pilar. He is he's coming out in his own right. He looks up to Victor. He wants some advice to come out to his parents because he has a different background in regards to his family beliefs and their religious beliefs, things of that nature. So I love Rahim. I thought that actor had the charm. He fits perfectly in this show. He had some really great moments in some of the more emotional moments towards the second half of the show that I really enjoy. So Rahim has taken the throne from Mia, who was my favorite character last year, but Rahim is my favorite character this season. He's such a great character, and he has a lot to do in the second half of the show. So we talked about character moments that I enjoyed. We talked about the themes, the mature nature that I enjoyed about the show, but let's transition to my criticisms. Now, I don't have many, but I will say, and this is literally a nitpick, this is just for me being a sports fan. I grew up in playing sports. Football and basketball was my favorite sport growing up. It's my first love. This is a nitpick, and this shows you, again, the little bit of issues I have with this show. But whenever they play basketball in this show, I am not a fan of those scenes. You can just tell that they're actors that never picked up a basketball before, and little silly things like having a dance off in the middle of a timeout, which would have been, delay a game. But as I digress, I'm not a fan of the basketball in this show, which is very literally like 2-3 scenes tops. But I do like how the show implements the basketball team, which we'll talk about in the spoiler, in regards to how they feel about Victor coming out and things like that nature. But that's a minor thing. The basketball scenes, not for me, but there's not too many to complain about. But the things that do kind of stand out to me in regards to negatives, I love all these characters. I love the different themes that they tackle, the subject matters they tackle, but sometimes it does feel like it's a little bit too much going on in regards to, we'll have, for example, we focus on Felix and his mom, Dawn, in this season, and she's dealing with depression. So we would have like an episode, and the show does a good job of like, episode by episode, there's a theme, there's a subject that they want to tackle, and for the most part, they give you a pretty good satisfying conclusion within that individual episodes, and obviously things carry on for further episodes. But we would focus on Felix's mom for episode, I'm just throwing out an episode, let's just say episode 2. We see that she's depressed, she's going through her, manic states, and then we don't catch up to that storyline to maybe like episode 5. And then we spend some time on an episode 5, and we're still dealing with Victor and all the other stories, and then we don't pick up to her character to the end of the season. So there was many different times of that happening where we would be introduced to something. I think of Mia and her dad and her mom and this new baby and the wedding. It just like sporadically would pop into the season, and it kind of felt like the show, it doesn't feel like it was forgotten about, but it wasn't as fully fleshed out as it could have been, and it felt like at times that those particular storylines would be a little bit rushed by the time we got to the finale of the show. So again, it's understandable when you have 15 lead characters in your show, but like I said, at times there were a little bit too many plots going on at once, and it just didn't feel like not every plot had the proper type of fleshing out that I would have liked. And then kind of the last thing that I have on my criticisms here on the show and this just speaks for like drama and YA in general. Sometimes there is some moments where there are forced drama scenes, and I just have in my notes here. For example, Mia and a particular character that she gets in a relationship late in the season, things are just going really well, and then just like boom, we have this forced drama of something being brought up in a conversation, or we have a character that is having a conversation with another character. They maybe hug each other, and then that person who they're maybe dating walks in, and they walk in at that perfect time, and they assume that they're into this person, right? So there's a lot of times where, of course, life isn't perfect, and there's things that just literally can just happen out of nowhere, but at times you can tell when the show is like, okay, we need to throw in some drama right here to shake things up, and sometimes some of those scenes would resolve their issues within that same scene, which it was like a little bit too convenient, but that didn't happen a lot, but it did happen sometimes. I'm just like, okay, this is a show saying we need to have some conflict, let's just throw it in here and see what we can do. So, and by the way, like I said, me saying throwing it, it's not that the show was sloppy at any means, and it was just feel like it was just like manufactured drama for the sake of TV drama type of stakes. So that's literally all of my main criticisms that I have with this second season. There's a lot more pros and cons. So overall, I love this second season. Love Victor. It is, I have to say definitively, I think this is coming from, I love season 1, but I think season 2 is just as good as season season 1 for the depth, for the mature nature, the storylines, the characters, the acting felt elevated, the scripts felt elevated. It's just a fantastic show. I'm either smiling while watching the show because I love these characters, or I'm like, oh, that's such a sweet moment. It's just such a great show, and I really hope that people gravitate towards the second season, and hopes that it catches as many eyes as possible, because I think it's a true it's great to see these LGBTQ community type of movies and shows and tackling other subject matters. I'm just such a fan of this show, and I really hope you all enjoyed this second season as much as I did. So let me know your thoughts on the spoiler-free portion in the comments below. So full spoiler warning for those that haven't watched the entire season. We're now going to dive into the kind of the discussion portion of this video. So we're about, 16 minutes in. So this might go for another 10 minutes or so. Again, I'm such a fan of this show. So again, time codes about each episode will be beginning to spoilers starting now. So episode 1, I thought was a great way to bring us back into this world. We follow up that scene when he tells, we see Victor telling his parents that he is gay, and just seeing their reaction and everything. But the majority of this first episode gives us 10 weeks later. We see that Isabel is still not accepting of her son, which obviously we talk about in that spoiler-free portion, that it took her a while to finally come to terms with Victor's decision. But we see the Salazars are now separated. We have Armando living in his own place. We see that obviously Isabel is still with the kids. We get a moment of, Mia still dealing with what Victor did to her. And I love what they did with Mia in this season, because she says so much so in a later episode that, how could you be mad at Victor? It's him coming out. He's able to be who he is, but at the same time, it broke her heart. So we see that she's been out at summer camp all summer, and this is the last weekend before school starts, and we see that Mrs. Salazar is not comfortable with Benji. She throws away her favorite dish, and she's just not comfortable with that idea of Benji being there. And that's another big theme. Benji and Mrs. Salazar are having some beef throughout the entire season. We see again that Mia is struggling with the decision of Victor. We see that she's struggling with her dad having this new baby. So Mia's going through a lot in these first few episodes, and of course the episode wraps up with us finding out that Felix might be living on the street because of his mom manic depression. So a good way to kick us back into this first season. I thought was a really good episode to bring us back into this Love Victor universe. Episode 2, which I think the main theme of episode 2 was parenting. The parenting style of when you do have a son or daughter that's coming out to you. So we see Isabel, just letting Victor know, kids at school might not be as accepting, honey, and you might need to be prepared for that, which obviously Victor doesn't want to hear that. He just wants support from his mom in this situation. So we see the first day of school, and right off the bat, within the first minutes of Benji and Victor, being boyfriends at school, his teammates walk up to him and say, oh, Mia cheated on you, man. Forget that. We're going to have you another girl. And he doesn't tell them that he's out, that he's gay, which obviously this was a whole theme between him and Benji. It's just like you're not gay enough, you're too gay for this type of group of people. So it was I really enjoy how the show tackled that in regards to just the different sides of coming out and being comfortable with who you are. So we get that in the second episode. We see, the rumors of Mia cheating on him coming out. And it was just, again, I thought it was just so complex and so nuanced and just so rich and refreshing to see this in this type of format. Again, normally speaking, in in media, in movies and shows with the LGBTQ community, we get the parents, the mom might be more open, more accepting to her son or daughter coming out, and the dad is the one that's like, this isn't right, I want you to be a man and marry a woman and have kids and all that stuff. But no, not in this case. Armando, he has his issues, but or not his issues, but he has his reservations at first, but he wants to go to the classes, which we get the cameo from Josh Duhamel later in the season, but he's more accepting versus it's really bothering Mrs. Salazar. It really, again, her religion, her background, she is just not comfortable with the idea. So I love that they kind of turn the tables on what we're normally used to seeing in media. We see Felix being gifted the money from Pilar, which I really enjoyed how they handled that love story and kind of how they came to be, which we'll talk about obviously at the end. But that was obviously planned. They planted the seeds last year that she had a thing for Felix, but obviously kind of really see it kind of coming to fruition in this season. Wrapping up the second episode, we see Mia falls for this freshman, and then Victor ultimately comes out to the school, which I thought was such an earnest moment. It's a great moment to end off that episode. So episode 3, which we have a lot to tackle here, assuming that all gays are, the stuff that goes on within the families, and that all gay guys are like into fashion. They have less masculine sides about them. So we kind of see that because obviously when Victor comes out, the girls in school are like, hey girl, hey queen, what do you think about like this? Assuming that he's like into like the more feminine side of being gay, which was a very interesting subject matter to tackle. And then just kind of having that support system, which I thought was great, and seeing both sides of coming out and how that affects people, right? And in this episode, we see, again, like I said, the coach trying to make it more comfortable for his the teammates that came out and said they don't feel comfortable getting dressed in front of Victor, which is just so stupid and silly, but ignorant to say the least. But that's how they tackle that storyline was interesting. Again, we're seeing more of the seeds being planted for Pilar being there for Felix. Again, she was there for him throughout the entire season, more so than Lake, because Blake, obviously, her thing was telling her mom about the situation and kind of getting intermingled within all that stuff. But I love the conversation that they tackle on the show. Going back to Mia, she has a moment where she says that I can't be mad at you, Victor, because you are able to be who you are, and I love that for you. But obviously, in return, it breaks my heart because obviously she feels like I can't keep a boyfriend. I can't keep my dad interested in me. He puts his career over me. He has his new baby. He has his new wife. My mom left me. So I love that they continued that storyline of how she is dealing with all this stuff, and I just a big fan of Mia just in general. So we kind of wrap up the episode with, again, Vic. He quits basketball. That's the one thing that him and Armando, his dad, kind of shared in regards to sports, but he ultimately decides to quit the team, which brings us to episode 4, which is just kind of the peer pressuring of being a teenager and having sex, and this is how to have sex for the first time being gay, right? So this is the episode with going out to the lake from Benji's lake, and it's time for everyone to have sex, right? We have Vic and Benji, we have Lake and Felix going out to the cabin. We see Vic is obviously nervous for having sex for the first time because he sees the lube in Benji's bag. He tries to call Simon, who makes his appearance in the finale, Nick Robertson, but we see that he's just nervous. He doesn't know what to do, and the same could be said about Felix. He feels like Lake is attracted to him, so we're seeing all that stuff going down. We get a little bit of like body shaming in this episode regarding how Felix doesn't feel like he's comfortable with being nude in front of Lake for the first time, and Lake has the same thing, dealing with her mom and giving her these kind of weight check-ins when she was a kid, so they tackle that in this episode. And listen, man, by the end of the episode, I mentioned the mature nature of the show. Everyone's having sex, and Benji and Vic finally have sex with each other, and it was just a good moment for them to kind of embrace each other, and they tell each other they love each other for the first time. So really good episode of showing, again, the peer pressures of having sex, but also the comfortability of being comfortable with yourself as well as your partner. So really good episode, one of my favorites of the season for sure, which brings us into probably my favorite episode, which is episode 5, which is the religious side of how religion can influence parents and how they were raised and how they look at the LGBTQ community, and seeing the different perspectives of the different levels of being gay, right? And how Benji's more comfortable with it than his partner in regards to Victor. So in this episode, we see, again, Felix's mom is doing a little bit better. Felix wants to introduce Lake to his mom. The Salazars are starting to get back together. They want to start going on dates, but it's Mrs. Salazar who doesn't want to go to the meetings that Armando's been going to. We get Benji introduces Vic to his band, and this is where the conflict comes in, where the band's like, oh, we're glad you're not a jock anymore, right? It's just like Victor just can't find the lane, right? He's either, like he says in this episode, I'm either not gay enough considered for Benji's friends, or I'm too gay for my basketball team. So I love that conflict that Victor goes on. And like I said, this is my favorite episode of the season, goes on in this. And we see, again, Felix's mom is doing good. She meets Lake, but she kind of has like a moment where she gets back into the depression. And this is where we see at the end of the episode, Vic decides to go back on a team. And ultimately, we see Andrew and Mia are officially a thing. At this point of the season, Mia has met that college guy. He was a weirdo in the camp episode, and at this point we have Andrew, who was dating that girl, who we obviously think that by the season 3 we're going to probably get Andrew's ex dating Lake, but as a week we'll get to that a little bit later. But this is where finally Mia can find someone that accepts her for who she is, and Andrew's been there the whole time, which I applaud the actor, who for me, season 1 he was just the jock or whatever the case may be, but he had a little bit of heart. But in this season I like what Andrew had to give to offer, and I like that they finally inevitably got together. So moving on to episode 6, which this is just like, you can't pick your family. You're dealing with acceptance of your past, and we have everything going on with Veronica and the baby issues, which was a really great moment for Mia. But this is where we really get to meet Rahim, who is he looks at Victor the same way Victor looked at Simon. He is encouraged. He's inspired by what Victor has been able to do. So he wants to get some tips from Victor coming out, because his family has their own religious beliefs and where they come from. So I love, again, I mentioned in my non-spoiler review that Rahim is my favorite character, but we see Isabella having this moment in regards to, again, she's just not accepting of what Victor is doing and dating Benji, but she seems to be accepting to Rahim. So she's starting to come around in this season. But we go back to Dawn. She has issues with Blake, or to say Lake's mom, coming to her and feel like she's taking her son away. So we see that she ultimately gets omitted into a facility, which was sad, because obviously Felix has that moment when he goes to their house and he's like, I need a place to stay. That was a great emotional moment, and so sad, because Felix is such a great character. But again, we have the conversation we had about Isabella talking about, this is how I was raised like this, Victor, that, my religious beliefs, it's just hard for me to kind of accept that. But, we find out that she had a gay aunt when she was younger, and all that stuff. So this was just a great follow-up, a great episode, again, about just like you can't pick your family. Your family has their own, your parents have how they were raised, and it's kind of hard to get out of that mindset, but it just takes a attempt. You got to try. And we see that with the Salazar. So I really enjoyed, again, the parenting and the mature nature of this show. So moving on to episode 7, which was an interesting episode, right? We get Benji and learn about his secret that he's kept from Victor on his birthday, and they have a big fight, their first big fight that ultimately leads them to breaking up, right? So we see him celebrating his birthday, and he's acting weird around Victor, and we learn why, because of his being in sobriety. And we see Lake trying to figure out this perfect way to apologize for Felix for everything that happened with his mom. But then again, like I said, the meat and potatoes of this episode was we see that Benji has been keeping a secret from Victor in regards to he had an accident, which we knew about, but he didn't know that he was an alcoholic. So that obviously caused a rift in their relationship. Victor's like, why didn't you tell me? And then he's like, well, I'm sorry, but I've been dealing with a lot of your stuff, so hopefully you can forgive me. And Victor's like, no, I really wish you would have shared that. They had that conflict, they had this beef, and I'm just like, come on, guys, can we just forgive each other? This is something that he had and didn't feel comfortable doing. And then we get the moment with the Salazar family, which I was just like, what's going on here? Armando is seeing the girl at the church and he wants to see other people, but I'm like, but I thought you wanted to get back to your wife. So I was just like, this is kind of coming out of left field for me. But nonetheless, speaking of coming out of the left field, we see Victor and Benji have their makeup sex, and Mrs. Salazar, Isabel, walks in on them having sex. I thought that was such a great moment, because it's just like, oh, they're finally getting back into terms, and now maybe things aren't going to work out, because we know Isabel is not a fan of Benji dating her son. So that brings us into episode 8, which is, again, just kind of tackling different perspectives, different races in regards to Rahim, and of course Victor and Benji having their beef in regards to Victor's mom. So we see they have the fight at the beginning of the episode, Isabel and Benji, and we see Adrian, the little kid, Victor's brother, hears that his brother is dating. And that's kind of a big theme. Adrian doesn't get that much to do, but they want to keep their son. They didn't want that secret to get out or find out that his brother's gay, because they feel like he was too young, which By the way, is Adrian he looks like he's like 9, 10 years old? I don't know. I think that I'm not a parent, of course, but either way, that he finds out, and obviously Isabel's like super mad at Benji at this point because he outed her son in front of her younger son. So we get all that stuff there. We get Mia's dad, Mekhi Phifer. He says he's not going to take the job in Stanford, but ultimately takes the job. I'm like, what a bad dad move on that part. I was so mad at Harold at that point. But this was, like I said, we get the fighting, the rift between the two of Benji and Victor goes to Rahim and tells him all this the drama going on, which again, Benji and Victor, they seem to be on the same page by the end of the episode, but then Benji sees a text from Rahim. Victor tells him that he told him, and then he's like, you know what, we need to take a break, which obviously was heartbreaking for Victor at that moment. But we'll going back to parenting and coming to terms with son's sexuality, and that is Isabel goes to the preacher and says, you have no right to tell my younger son, Adrian, that his older brother, who he loves more than anything in this world, that he's going to hell. Like, why would you say that? So I love that moment because, again, not to offend people that are religious, but it is just it's a perspective, right? It's their people's opinion, but just the idea that God doesn't love you because you love your own, sex. It's just a weird concept to me, and just accepting love and who people are. But I love that moment for Isabel. And again, by this point in the season, she's now come to terms to her son being gay, which I thought was a great moment for that character. Episode 9, we get the date with Rahim and Victor, which was almost like a mirror episode of Victor and Simon last year when he went to New York. They went to the gay club, and in this case, they do the same thing. They skip school. We get the moment where Victor sees his dad out on a date with, I believe her name was Shelby, and that was obviously awkward. And then we go to the club. They're doing the karaoke. We see Rahim and Victor. They definitely have a thing for each other, and Victor's mom comes to the club. Yet another great son and mom moment where she's just apologizing to him and she accepting him for who he is. Just a great moment. And again, we get the moment where Rahim and Victor are really feeling each other, but they don't kiss each other ultimately. And just a really good episode to me. Just seeing, again, that mirroring of, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, that episode 9 was when Victor went to New York and had that moment with Simon. I might be wrong on the ordering of the episode, but I just thought it was a really good way to kind of mirror last year's episode with this episode. So finishing up with the finale, which I thought was perfect. I love this finale. I love how they wrapped up things. We get Vic invites, Rahim to Mia's dad's wedding. We get Armando is seriously dating Shelby at this point, because I forgot to mention in last episode that we see Isabel gives him an ultimatum. It's either our family, let's try to work this thing out, or let's just, let's go ahead and date other people. So at this point, he's like looking to seriously date Shelby. They're going over each other's house. She's cooking dinner, all that stuff. And Isabel walks. She walks in on everyone this season, right? She walks in on them having their kind of morning routine. And again, this is where she, lays out the ultimatum to make a decision. We see Dawn is back home. She seems to be doing good, and ultimately, she's grateful that Lake's mom stepped in and Lake was willing to put their relationship on the line to help his mom out. So that was a really good moment. And ultimately, we see where that leads. But nonetheless, we go back to Maya, and she learns the truth of her dad accepting a job. I just feel so bad for her. You got this wedding going on. You got this new baby coming on the way, a new sibling. Your dad lied to you yet again. Mom's not in the picture. Just had a boyfriend that you love. Her and Victor early in the season commit their love to each other as friends. So Maya, she went through a lot in this episode and in the season in its entirety. But we get a really good moment with Armando before about Isabel. But he's on the fence, right? He ultimately goes into Shelby's house, but we know where he ends up at the end of the episode. But we see Felix thinking more about Pilar because of everything she's done for him, and she's been there the entire time. She leaves the fish in his pocket while he's dancing with Lake, and he ultimately decides to leave Lake and go to Pilar, and they ultimately have their kiss. And I can never remember what age group they're in. I believe they're juniors, right? Victor, Felix, Benji, they're all juniors, right? Going into their senior year, and Pilar's a year behind. Let me know if I'm incorrect on the dates or the groups that they're in. But he goes there, and they have that moment there. We see that Benji comes to the dance. He sees, Victor dancing with Rahim. He's like, I can't believe this. We need to go, it looks like they're going to be broken up. But we see Rahim admits his liking of Victor and kisses him and tells him, hey, if you want to make this happen, you know where I live, which we'll talk about that ending there. But we see how the episode wraps up. Felix tells Victor that he does have a thing for his sister. Victor tells him about Rahim. They ultimately decide, hey, who could you not imagine your life with? We see again, Felix picks Pilar over Lake. We see Lake might be in a relationship, opening up. We don't have any lesbians on this show, so we might get a lesbian couple with Lake and Andrew's ex-girlfriend. We see that Armando ultimately picks his family. He picks his wife. He wants to work on things, which I love that moment. It was so earned, and I got a little emotional seeing that because I love those characters. I love the family unit that they have. And then we end the season with Victor calling Simon. We get the one Simon, reveal, Nick Robinson, who, if you all watched A Teacher, it looked like he was probably shooting a teacher because of his hair and his, beard that he's growing in at that time. But he ultimately closes the door. He appreciates Simon and everything he provided him as far as friendship. But I think this is the last time we'll see Simon in this show. As they say, he thanks him for everything. But we wrap up, the last shot is we see Simon saying his goodbyes, and we see Victor running in the streets and ring someone's doorbell, and the season ends. And I am safe to assume that he did ultimately pick Rahim over Benji, but hey, I could be wrong. Could be a whole new character in its entirety, but no, I'm pretty sure it's Rahim, and they're going to probably be a thing in season 3, and we'll see what comes of season 3. Also, I forgot to mention one of my favorite characters, Mia. She's going out of town to go visit her mom with Andrew, so we're going to get that. Is her dad ultimately going to stay in, Georgia? Everything with the baby. Hopefully everything works out with his future, or his new wife's baby, and the birth of that child. We obviously have everything going on with Pilar and Felix. What's the relationship going to be with Lake and her new friend? So many storylines to tackle, and I can't wait for season 3. Hopefully it's next year, just like it was just a year between season 1 and season 2, and I can't wait to see what they have up its sleeve for season 3. So full-on breakdown, 30, almost 40-minute plus long review. Again, this just shows how much I love this show. Again, it was a little bit sporadic, so I apologize if it's a little bit all over the place, but let me know your favorite episode, your favorite moments, your favorite characters, things that worked, things that didn't work for you, and what you would like to see in a season 3. Let's talk about it all in the comments below. If you stuck around to the end of this video, thank you so much. I appreciate the support. Make sure to like, to share, to comment, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and hit the bell. That way you don't miss any of my other content. Hope you all enjoyed this review. Hope you're staying safe. We'll see you on the next video.